I sit here by the candlelight, scrawling away in a hurry. The pages of my journal burn feverishly as my pen engraves this wicked tale. For many nights now I have been an observer of something fantastic. To whomever finds my words, I beg you to seek shelter, for you may be in grave danger. It began 5 nights ago. I was walking around, my mind was restless. I could not sleep, so I decided to step out. I had been thinking about my studies and could not seem to grasp at the lectures and notes I had been taking. Insomnia. I kept telling myself that's why I couldn't sleep. And truth be told, there were other forces at work that night. What exactly those are, I hadn't a clue. Fate, some people call it, or maybe even destiny. Regardless of what you will, I still found myself out that night, walking along a pebbled path next to a pond that reflected the moon. The night was so still, and had I not been so engrossed in my pathetic frustrations, it would have been a beautiful evening. I can't recall what it was exactly that caught my attention, but it was strong enough to break my focus. I stopped in my tracks, just east of a gate, when my eyes drew up and found my gaze met with another. A fair maiden dressed in red and white. She was fair-skinned and as pale as the moon. She radiated the moonlight, an angel sent from above. Her hair was the color of oak. Her figure was like an hourglass. It had stopped my heart. My body quivered, and I couldn't control it. Good evening, miss, was all I could muster. She looked into my eyes with a frosty gaze. A small smile cracked her porcelain face. She never said a word to me. She simply turned around and walked through the gate. I was astounded, for anyone to dare tread into the thickets must have been mad. I began to call at her, furiously to come back, but it was of no use. I would have gone after her, but what lay beyond the gate was not for me. For those of you who do not know the legends of the woods, I tell you, do not go in. It isn't safe. I am ashamed to admit it, but I could not find the courage that night. I retreated to my home with my tail between my legs. I went about my day as usual, but I could not shake the image of that woman from my head. It plagued me. And little did I know of what was to come. Later on in the evening, I decided to go forth in search of her again. And to my surprise, there she was, exactly as I had left her. I ran up to her and asked if she was okay, but she only smiled in response. Question after question I threw at her, but she made no remarks. This poor girl must have been simple or touched, I imagined. I grabbed hold of her hand and told her that I would take her home. She turned to the gate and began to walk forward, attempting to lead me through, but I pulled her back. Her face grew stern and puzzled. We can't go through there. It isn't safe. Let me take you home, I said. She pointed to the thicket. Miss, you can't be serious. There's evil that lives in those woods. Let's go to your home. It wasn't until a few more tries that I realized what she was telling me. To my horror, she lived in the woods, it seems. Oh, to only go back and change my decision. But as I said, forces out of my control had hold of me. My fate had been sealed. We began to make our way into the deep woods. I was terrified at every step of the way. The darkness began to play tricks on my eyes. Every movement of the trees looked to be a person moving about, watching, waiting, wanting. We had finally made it to our home, a rather large manor hidden amongst the trees. So many questions arose in my head, but those were quickly left behind as we entered into our home. The house was dark and grand, but truly I paid no attention to it. My focus had been on the young maiden. We came to her chambers, and, in a heated fury, we made love. It was passionate, exotic. Every movement and every kiss grew more and more intense. I burned for it, yearned for it, and never did I want it to end. But it did end, and I was made to leave. I can't recall how, but I was found in a drunken stupor. The police constables had found me, nearly naked in front of the gate. I had spent the night in the cell. It wasn't until the morning that the police had entered my cell and began to question me about the night's events. I explained to them what had happened, and they began to laugh. I paid them no mind and attempted to go about my day, but it was of no use. The toxic romance I had ingested left me wanting more and more. I burned with fever, wanting to be with her. The burden was so much so that I was kicked from my class for being disruptive. This went on nearly the same for the next few nights, except I began to grow weaker and weaker with each visit. On the 5th night, just before I stepped out to meet the fair maiden, I had a rapping at my door. It was my good friend Cecil, a man I had known since childhood. We had been inseparable up until a year ago. Our career paths had not been the same. I wanting to teach, and he now a man of the cloth. Cecil had grown worried about my behavior and asked what had been going on. I explained to him everything that had happened, about how much in love I was. As I began to describe the young woman to him, Cecil's face began to grow cold and pale. His eyes widened, his mouth agape. After a few moments in silence, he demanded that I take him to her. We came to the spot, just as I had so many nights before, but she wasn't to be found. I don't understand. She's always here, in the same spot, at the same time. I grew angry. How could she not be here? Cecil looked at me in disbelief and somewhat relieved. Maybe she's at the house. We can find her there, I exclaimed. I hurriedly dragged Cecil into the woods. He protested against me, but I would not be made a liar. When we arrived, my heart sank deep, for the great manor that was supposed to be standing laid in rubble and ash. I began to shed tears. Had my beloved perished in some tragic event? I fell to my knees, and Cecil, without a word, helped me to my feet and hurried me home. We sat next to the fireplace when we had arrived. The air had grown incredibly chilled. For an hour we sat, not making a peep, until finally Cecil broke his silence. He began to tell me a story about the manor we had just visited. The Rosethorne Manor, he said it was called. A place that for many years had been shrouded in dark secrets. Since the time of the colonies had the place been avoided. Many people believe that a coven had resided there. They say women, dressed in red, would often be seen in and around the home. Strange rituals and sound would come from all around. No one truly knew what exactly had gone on until late one September night, some 60 years ago. A rash of young ladies had gone missing from the town. They searched and searched, but they were nowhere to be found. But on that night, many people became witness to something very strange indeed. From deep in the woods where the manor had laid, a giant column of light erupted, and with it came the horrible demonic chanting. The people of the town became restless and flocked in to investigate the strange occurrence. What they fell witness to can only be described as hell on earth. As they ventured through the trees, a horrible sight fell before them. The young women who had gone missing had finally been found. From the trees they hung, crucified like our Lord. Their stomachs had been flayed and organs removed, except for one crucial part, their wombs. They had been left, but not as they were. After examination, it was found that the young women had been sexually assaulted and cut open alive. Their wombs had been stuffed with stones that had been heated and engraved with some kind of demonic rune. In a furious rage, the people ran to the home. They found the headmistress and tortured her until she gave up her secrets. She gleefully admitted that she was the leader of the coven, and had been trying to summon a great demon into the world. With the ritual stopped, the woman and her home were burned to the ground. But before the woman was killed, she swore revenge on the town. Cecil had run to his home, and when he returned, he carried with him many bundles of papers. Among the bundle, there was a photo of the woman. It was her. Cecil was mortified of the description I had given him, for he believed it to be the same woman from that terrible night. It was all too much to take in. Cecil's story, the woman in red. That night, I had terrible, dark dreams. Dreams of hellfire, great demonic beasts, devils and demons alike. You must be wondering, why am I writing this down? Well, it seems as though my time draws near, for I awoke this morning with these strange symbols drawn all over my body. I'm afraid that when these are found, I won't either be alive or be myself. What my fate will be, I am not certain, only that it can't possibly be good. The light is beginning to fade, and only recently has the chanting begun. I hastily write this in the hopes that you do not share the same dilemma. Heed my warnings, I beg of you. Stay away from the woods. Should you ever find the lady in red, run. Run as fast as you can. She is but a lie, and I can see her even now. She's outside my window, standing in the shadows, her face twisted and gnarled. I should be afraid, but my nerves are shot. I can only feel the hot breath of something upon my neck. Hey you, Ghostpaw here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. If you liked tonight's story, don't forget to hit that like button, leave me a comment, share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe so you can catch more of my spooky tales. And remember, when you see the moon, howl. Howl!